Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we deepen our exploration about what's true in the world and how do we discern fact from fiction, truth from falsehood, and make the kinds of evaluations and discernments as we receive information from mass media, social media, and various ways that we seek to know what we know so that we can navigate appropriately, but knowing that we are now in a world where it is impossible to do that. Now, we've been speaking about this over the months of the unfoldment of Humanity Rising. We touched on it again yesterday. We're in a world where if you go to a movie, you can't really tell the difference anymore between simulated reality and human reality. You watch social media and you don't know what's true and what isn't true, what's being manufactured and what's actually real. And we all find ourselves in a strange way back in Plato's cave. You'll remember the philosopher Plato 2,500 years ago tried to describe the human condition. He says it's like we're all in a cave and we're looking at the back of the cave and all we can see are shadows against the wall. And we look at those shadows and we are unsure what's really true, but we believe the shadows because we're told that that's what's true, but it really isn't. And then we look down on our hands and our feet and we realize that we've been fettered, chained. And then almost miraculously, one or two people stand up and they realize that the chains weren't put on by anybody else. We put them on ourselves. And someone turns around and walks to the front of the cave and all of a sudden is almost blinded by the full light of the sun and realizes that's reality. And then that person has a choice. They either enjoy the sunshine and they leave their compadres in the cave looking at the shadows, or they go back into the cave and try to help the people looking at the shadows to understand that if they just turned around, they could see the full light of day. But there's a problem, says Plato. If you do that, most of the people are so addicted to the shadows, they will punish you for trying to wake them up. And as Plato said, they will hang the good man on a tree. So that's the paradox of trying to discern reality in our time, just like it was 2,500 years ago in ancient Greece. The human predicament is more severe now because of the consequences of our delusions. But the basic reality that we all need to wake up is the same. So how do we do that? Well, what we're going to explore today is that the only way to do that is not to increase your knowledge of the world, but to raise your frequency in the world. Because the frequency by which you perceive and experience the world is what enables you to discern the shadows from the light. It's a great mystery. but it's the most obvious truth in our lives, that our frequencies determine our capacity to perceive. So how we do that and what emerges as our frequencies increase is what we're going to be delving into today. But it's a key to the redemption that we all seek in a world run amok. Before we dive into that very deep domain, let us just pause as we always do and just remember that in the end, all of us are just breath-breathing human beings, as Rumi said. And let us take 10 breaths together. So in a moment, you're going to hear the sound of a bell. When you hear that bell, just breathe in for about 5.5 seconds, and you'll hear the sound of another bell, and then breathe out. Just consciously breathe 10 breaths and feel the unity of all being. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to Humanity Rising. Let us now breathe together. Thank you, everyone. It's always so good to breathe coherently together. And in that spirit, it's my pleasure to introduce two great souls who I've gotten to know recently, Connie Marlow Baxter and Andrew Cameron Bailey, who have written a book called The Trust Frequency, which really explores this issue of how we wake up and how we increase our frequencies to such an extent that we can see reality as it actually is, and thereby enhance our awareness and our capacity to love each other and the world around us, of which we're just one seamless whole. Connie comes from a lifetime of seeking, mainly under the tutelage of Native American elders and ceremonies and rituals. Andrew was born in South Africa. He was tutelaged by the Zulus and came then to the United States and has been immersed in spiritual traditions. And together they've been speaking out and talking about these issues, seeking deeper layers of truth around the issues that they're going to present to us today. So Connie and Andrew, I feel a very warm welcome to both of you. And having looked at the trust frequency, I know that you're really exploring the central domain that all of us at Humanity Rising need to explore together, and that is, how do we increase our frequencies so that we can be more fully whole? So I turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Jim. What a treat it is to be here and to share these explorations into the nature of the universe with the Humanity Rising community. We are totally honored. Yes, my darling?
I think you would like to honor the land we're on.
Yes, and we're honoring the land we're on, the Cheyenne and Arapaho people, as the original caretakers of this land in Loveland, Colorado. And we're speaking on assumptions. We're speaking on our core assumptions, shifting our core assumptions about the nature of the universe.
So why would assumptions be important? That's a significant question here. I would just ask each of our audience here to just pay careful attention, because we're going to present something that has a lot of thought gone into it. The book was actually published back in 2012, so it's 10 years old, 11 years old now. There'll be a PowerPoint that we'll be sharing that'll take us on a very, very abbreviated version of the book. But in this next hour, we will give each of us an overview of a completely different reality. Now, having said that, I'm certain that many of the people watching and listening today are already here. On the other hand, some of us may not be. So why are assumptions important? Because they actually determine our reality. Our minds are so powerful that if I assume something to be true, in some sense, it actually is true. We actually create reality through the power of our consciousness. So Connie came up with this beautiful term, the trust frequency. And I'm a 60s guy. I have a ponytail hiding behind my head here. And vibrations is a term that we used. It's a 60s term, right? I'm picking up good vibrations, the Beach Boys, that kind of thing. I'm picking up good vibes from that beautiful girl that just walked in the door, whatever it might be. So it's a very familiar term to those of us old enough to remember those terms that we used in the hip generation as this country and the world exploded into a new level of consciousness, the miracle of the 1960s. So this, I would say, has its roots in that movement, and it has its roots way earlier than that, all the way back to Vedic times, the earliest historical, spiritual explorations that we're aware of, the documents from back in those days, all the way through both science, spirituality, the religions, to this very present moment and this breath that I am about to stop talking and take right now.
And right now, humanity's in this time of a shift in consciousness. And that shift in consciousness is precipitating a shift in frequency. And it's also caused by a shift in frequency of the earth. The old systems and behaviors were developed in a lower frequency of fear and separation and scarcity. So we were all responding to these energies, all of humanity, all four colors of man. And now the earth is in a higher frequency, so we're being called forth into this higher frequency, into our hearts, into the love that's contained in the human heart. We're melting the ice around the human heart, as Uncle Anyak says. So we're going to share with you our stories a bit. My story is that the prevailing paradigm never worked for me as a young person. And I'm like, I'm not basing my life on a paradigm that can't explain everything, because there's all this paranormal and all this stuff that the paradigm said isn't true when it was. So I went looking, and I went looking in Europe, and all I found was the same way of thinking. And I came home, and various visionary native elders came into my life, because the answers you get depend on the questions you ask. And these elders came into my life, Wallace Black Elk, whom you'll meet in this PowerPoint, and many others came into my life. And I saw through them this sacredness and oneness of all life. I mean, the trees, the rocks, they have two-way conversations with rocks. I mean, I just saw this beautiful reality. And then several years later, someone asked to me, have you read The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot? Well, I said no, and 3 people asked me, the third person put it in my hands. I actually read it, and I saw through him and through that book that what the native people know, the indigenous people know, is quantum science, is explained by quantum science. And then What the Bleep Do We Know came up, and it looked like it was time for it to go global, that the heart was ready for this, and the mind was ready for this. And now we have the new physics, and the unified physics of Nassim Haramein, Jude Currivan, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, those folks. So we're going to take you on a bit of a journey after Andrew tells you his story.
So as Jim said, I grew up in South Africa. I was actually born in England in 1943 in Coventry, the most destroyed city in England during World War II. Interesting place to hone in on as a spirit being as I arrived on this planet. Age 3, my family relocated to South Africa, where, as Jim said, I grew up mentored to some degree by the Zulus, an extraordinary tribe of powerful African warriors back when we first encountered them. And I do not want to leave out the monkeys. I was completely surrounded by monkeys, which has informed my behavior to this very day. So here we are. Through all of that, I ended up spent 7 years at university, and the universities in South Africa, British colonial, on the same standards as Cambridge and Oxford, getting degrees in, firstly with science, chemistry, physics, mathematics. And then my interests expanded. I never got a PhD. I just kept expanding my base, and I ended up studying social anthropology. And a significant part of that social anthropology study was comparative religion. And I found that what interested me the most, I wasn't really interested in Buddhism or Judaism or Christianity or Islam. I was really interested in what the Australian Aborigines thought, or the Kalahari Bushmen, or the Native Americans, or on and on and on, the Trobriand Islanders. I found myself fascinated by the answers to the question, what do the most ancient people on Earth know about human origins and the nature of reality? So I was asking those questions as a young man, and I came across something in a book called A Reader in Comparative Religion. You can probably still find it. It's about 6 inches thick. It's a major academic text. And it was on the subject of the worldview of the Australian Aborigines. And as I was reading it, now remember that I was a scientist before that, and I had some very vestigial introduction to quantum physics, this whole reality that began to emerge 110, 120 years ago. I realized that the Australian Aborigines, as we call them, they like to be called the Aboriginals. I don't think it matters. But the native people of Australia, the original people of Australia, were speaking what I call pure, poetic quantum physics. That was a coming together of something that really, really influenced me. I was 20, 21 years old, and I realized that, wow, I'm hearing one aspect from physics and a completely different but identical vision from native people. Wow, and that stuck with me until this day. So this presentation is to do with indigenous cosmology, the worldview of the indigenous peoples of the world, and unified physics. And you may or may not know that term. So Connie, would you like to just say what that is? Or would you like me to?
You're the science guy.
Come on. So unified physics is not the same thing as quantum physics. Quantum physics is already 100 or 120 years old. Unified physics is utterly and totally current. It is what we are learning today about things like black holes and the sub-Planckian levels of reality, the pixelated universe, the work that Jude Currivan presents in her book, her first book, for example, The Cosmic Hologram. So, having said that, I think we could be ready to plunge into a presentation that has the capacity to take us as, now this is crazy, but it's the only way I can imagine doing it. We've got 8 billion people on the planet, and each of us, one by one, has the option of raising our consciousness. And one of the best and most effective ways to do that is to have a darn good look at our assumptions. The cave that Jim was just talking about, the people looking at the shadows, and their fundamental assumption about reality is that those shadows were all there is, until somebody turns around and looks in the other direction and goes, oh my goodness. Okay, so this has the power. On an individual level, there's only 8 billion of us. I think we can get this done in the next couple of weeks. And here we are, the trust frequency, 10 assumptions for a new paradigm.
Okay, so we're going to share screen and take you on this journey. And so here we go.
Share screen, that all looks good.
How's that? Now, can you see our screen? I hope so. So we're shifting frequencies with indigenous cosmology and unified physics, a synthesis of the two. And so we'll, our book, The Trust Frequency, now.
That's why this, see?
Yeah.
Change it there and it'll, okay, glad we learned that.
Our book, The Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm. As Andrew mentioned, it came out 12 years ago. And we have been waiting for the consciousness to catch up and be ready for these 10 assumptions that take us beyond duality. And
Don't change it yet. Go back.
Okay.
I would just like to mention, as I have degrees in mathematics and social anthropology, that we were looking for something for the cover of the book that would represent both indigenous wisdom and Western wisdom or Western science. And so this is the new mathematics, my friends. Coco Pelli equals MC squared. And there's another one.
And we have another one
that Connie came up with.
That I came up with. Quantum reality plus indigenous cosmology equals the conscious, loving universe. QR plus IC equals CLU.
So a little tongue-in-cheek, but actually it's deep if you think about it.
And this is an expanded paradigm with quantum mechanics and the new unified physics informing the Western paradigm and expanding our understanding of the nature of the universe. And it allows us to align with our hearts, our inner knowing, and our pan-indigenousness. And I made up that word.
You did.
And that word means that we're coming to access that knowing that all of humanity carries in our hearts. And that the native people, the indigenous peoples of the world have been keeping a contact with that knowing for humanity. And they're stepping forward now as humanity's ready to hear and ready to connect to that oneness and sacredness of all life. And we'll go into more detail of that indigenous world view.
And if I may, I'd just like to suggest another meaning of the term pan-indigenousness, because that's what I got from those words.
Okay.
And that is, we're all indigenous to planet Earth, to Mama Gaia. There is not one human being on this planet who is not indigenous to the planet. And then we have all these ethnic divisions that we commonly regard as indigenous.
Right.
Makes
And
sense?
indigenous maybe to the cosmos.
Well, there's that.
There's that, which the indigenous peoples bring in big time. So that's that expanded reality. So we're asking, are you ready to move beyond duality? Because this is the key to that shift in frequency. We're not going to get into that higher frequency until we let go of right, wrong, good, evil, victim, perpetrator. It's huge. It's a huge leap. And we're bringing forth a construct on the nature of the universe that within that construct, there's only one answer. It's all love.
With
So
a capital L.
With a capital L. And we'll go into that further. So what we're saying is it's a big leap. And where I got from Indigenous Cosmology, from Wallace and from all the elders that came into my life, they said, listen, and I listened. And what I heard was, everything has a purpose. If one takes that as absolutely true, then everything has a purpose. And I brought it into it's all love, because we are loved by this conscious loving universe. And here's Western thought.
Or Western religions. So each of the religions, with the exception, I imagine, of Buddhism, but all of the religions say God is everything. Everything is God. And God is love. So if God is everything and God is love, then that means that everything is love.
Love.
And it also means that love is everything. The Beatles could write a song about that.
Yeah, they could. And we could expand on the Beatles song.
And then this new unified physics, which is emergent, it's coming out as we speak. And it's based on the understanding that the universe is fractal and holographic, and that we create reality. Wow, we're not just a little meaningless speck on a little meaningless planet.
Yeah.
We create reality. At the very least, we create the reality we experience.
And so what we got from that is the trust frequency, where there is only love, and we understand that we are the conscious loving universe. We're going to take you on a journey into these ideas, but this is just a little overview. And here's Rumi, who says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. So he's showing us there is that place. Thank goodness for Rumi, because he's expressing that field where we can go once we understand how loved we are by the conscious loving universe. So let's see here.
Down here.
We're talking intercultural syntheses. We're talking that the fact that there have been 2 syntheses to date here in the United States with the Native Americans. These syntheses that we're moving into as we come together, the all colors of man come together. And the examples of these syntheses in the United States are the peace and friendship for 54 years in Plymouth, Massachusetts. It's Massachusetts now, between the Mayflower Pilgrim separatists and the Native Americans. That's a very extraordinary spiritual beginning of the United States that we address in our other work, our First 50 Years project. It's a very important shift into understanding the spiritual alignment of the Mayflower Pilgrim separatists and the Native people they lived amongst in peace and friendship for 50 years. And the second great synthesis is the Iroquois contribution to the U.S. Constitution. The Iroquois chiefs were invited to the Constitutional Convention, and there was an extreme amount of interaction between the Iroquois and the founders of the U.S. in 1776 era. And aspects of the great law of the Iroquois came into the Constitution. So that's another great synthesis. And now, oh, well, here, I just wanted to go into this natural democracy, how the Iroquois express their idea of democracy, which is totally inclusive. In our perception, all life is equal, and that includes the birds, animals, things that grow, things that swim. All life is equal in our perception.
And that was from Oren Lyons, recently passed away. Beautiful. I think.
Did he? I don't think so.
No, he's still going?
Yeah.
Wow, sorry. I really thought he was gone.
Yeah.
So he's a beloved elder on the East Coast in upstate New York. And then out in the Southwest, the Hopi prophecy. There are a number of prophecies attributed to the Hopis. And this one, Connie uses it to illustrate what she feels the third great synthesis, which is in process as we speak, is based on, or at least the indicators that we can see that let us know that this is actually happening. When birds fall from the sky and the animals are dying, sound familiar? A new tribe of people shall come unto the earth from many colors, classes, and creeds, who by their actions and deeds shall make the earth green again. They will be called the warriors of the rainbow.
Yes.
I think that does describe, from a certain perspective, exactly what is going on right now.
Exactly.
On the extinctions on the one hand and the greening Earth movement on the other.
As we move into Humanity 2.0, and this Humanity 2.0.
So the features of what Barbara Marx Hubbard might have called Homo Universalis, I tongue-in-cheek call it Humanity 2.0 version 2. The fully evolved human manifests the best features of all previous cultures. We are part of nature, not above it, aware of the scientific perspective, yet not ruled by it, tuned into a higher reality, yet fully present in the world. We move into unity consciousness, which brings forth something that has never been on the planet before, an evolutionary leap for our species.
Yes, that's what's up. And we're in that process, moving into unity consciousness. So here are the Bushmen of the Kalahari expressing their perspective.
And one of the great privileges of my life was taking Connie to the Kalahari in Southwest Africa and introducing her to some of my friends there. And here's a little sentence from one of them that I just love. Open your heart to others. When you do so, you will feel our spirit. It will make you dance, and it will make you happy. And then you too will be a Bushman.
So that's what it's all about, this opening of the human heart as we move into a higher frequency. And here are the Aborigines, an Aborigine speaking, Aboriginal.
Yeah,
Yes, indeed.
So from the Australian perspective, we are all visitors to this time, this place. We are just passing through. Our purpose here is to observe, to learn, to grow, to love, and then we return home.
And so we're moving into the science aspect of this process.
So we just had that beautiful message of unity from both the world's oldest people, currently existing culture, the two of them, the Bushmen of the Kalahari and the Australians. And at the same time, what was going on out in the Western world, the mechanical clockwork universe, reductionist science, where the entire universe is described as being a grand machine is one of the terms for it, a huge clockwork mechanism that doesn't even know we exist. It is not alive. It contains life, but it is not in and of itself alive. So it does not know we exist, and it definitely doesn't love us, because how could it? It's not a living thing. We disagree.
Yes, and this scientific paradigm that came in with Newton and Descartes was, in my view, was the last stage in our response to that lower frequency that the Earth was in. And we, as you know, human history has been full of terrible stuff. All colors of man, all of humanity has had a light and a deep shadow. And that is because we've been responding to that lower frequency of fear, of separation, of scarcity. So with those three elements, and then this reductionist science comes in and says, hey, guess what, kids? There's no God, there's nothing, there's no meaning, it's all mechanical. So you can do anything, it doesn't matter. The earth is just a pile of dirt, and the animals don't matter, and you can feed them all kinds of stuff, and you can feed yourself all kinds of stuff, because nothing matters. And to me, that was the last big push into us coming to understand that that doesn't work, that this whole lower frequency, this whole thing of fear, this whole thing of separation, we're moving into unity consciousness, this whole thing of scarcity. See, we haven't quite grappled that it is a abundant universe in another frequency. So we're going to just take you along on this journey from this reductionist science that's going away, these old assumptions about the nature of the universe that have influenced us and created incredible abundance with the Industrial Revolution and all that, but it's obviously not working. It's not aligned with universal law and the human heart and the human spirit and all of creation.
And it's a pretty bleak worldview based on fear, scarcity, and separation.
Yeah.
That's not what I would choose if I were designing a universe.
Yeah, and but you can see how it's natural that we would create these systems. So there's no shame, no blame. We've done a great job. But we're being pulled forward into this higher frequency.
So think about this. A new scientific paradigm is emerging. And Dean Radin is someone we actually know rather well. He is the chief scientist for the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And this is a quote from his book, Supernormal. It is known as a certainty that there exists an unimaginably powerful creator and sustainer of reality, and of you in particular. This creator is unborn, uncreated, undying, and unchanging. That, my friends, from a scientist, a legitimate scientist. So what can we gather from the original explosion of quantum reality 100 years ago? The days of Einstein and Bohr and Bohm and all those marvelous people. The two things that I think are relevant are quantum entanglement, the fact that it's scientifically provable that we are in fact all deeply, profoundly, intimately interconnected, no matter what the distance between us. And the observer effect, the fact that our consciousness affects reality. Those are two very big lessons that are now 100 or so years old. So here are some beautiful images to do with the oneness of creation. Everything interacts, is interrelated. If I change, if I take a breath, if I raise my consciousness, I influence everything in the entire universe. And that goes throughout. Everything is connected.
It's not only connected, it's fractal, it's holographic.
Mm-hmm.
So from the tiniest sub-Planckian scale to the universe, everything is contained in that little teeny sub-Planckian scale. They're finding that. Nassim Haramein and his explorations and discoveries.
And not just the universe. It turns out there are trillions upon trillions of universes right now. It's pretty extraordinary, friends.
Yeah, so every cell in our body has all these planks in it, sub-Planckian things. I mean, it's huge. So just try to grok that we are the conscious, loving universe. So it's a conscious universe.
And I would mention quickly, there are 4 or 5 books of that title by very well-known physicists, and the conscious universe. And I actually encountered 2 of those physicists, and I said, you have a book called The Conscious Universe. Does that mean it's alive? And they looked at me, both of them, and they said, of course. Oh, the universe is alive. That's not a clockwork machine, is it?
No, and here we have an image of humans and their connection to all that is and the creativity in this conscious universe and how important our consciousness is in this universe. So we're proposing that it is a loving universe as well as a conscious universe. You've heard us use that term, the conscious loving universe. Well, here we go.
So there's a book or several books called The Living Universe. So it's now scientifically acceptable to say the universe is alive. But I've yet to come across anyone other than us who says it's a loving universe. And we have a very good reason for calling it that, and we'll explain.
So here's Sally Ranney, a top environmentalist and activist. And here she is with Wallace Black Elk back in the 90s when we were together with Wallace in Aspen, Colorado.
Today we are honored to have with us Wallace Black Elk.
Mitakuye, to all my relations, and I thank you to each and everyone here and in the television world. And it's about time we all come to focus our mind universally, because I speak from the universe of minds. And the way we're born with love, kindness, generosity, and giving. So we're born with love. So the love in itself is God, and love is mother. So mother is love, and God is love, and so on. So I think this is the way we should teach our children.
So that's my good friend Wallace Black Elk, and expressing that it is, in fact, all love from the visionary indigenous perspective. And I called Wallace Black Elk a walking phenomenon. From the day I met him, my jaw dropped, and it was still, I hadn't recovered from the day he died, and I attended his funeral, his interment. So here is Jude Curran speaking on the science of love.
This is why I feel this is such an incredibly important time, because this convergence of science and spirituality actually includes and transcends both. So this is a cosmology of consciousness. This is literally a science of love. This is holding us in a unifying framework where everything in existence matters, where everything in existence has meaning and purpose, and we are the agents. We are the heads and hearts and hands of its evolutionary impulse.
So Jude is a physicist and archaeologist, and she has a PhD in archaeology, so she brings forth.
This is why.
Okay, here we go. Anyway, Jude is a friend and is bringing forth very important information about unity consciousness, the unitive narrative, and so it's all very exciting.
So return back to basics. Earlier on, we mentioned the trust frequency. I mentioned the 60s idea that we could be aware of the vibrations we were picking up from other people. I'm picking up good vibrations. There's wisdom in that sentence. So here's a beautiful graphic that just illustrates what is actually going on in this world. This graphic here could actually be a living being. We look the way we look through these eyes, but what do we look like from another, from some kind of extraordinary inner-going microscope? We might look something like this, or this.
Here we are creating reality by the power of our consciousness. So we're going to go deeper into this with the trust frequency.
And that is one of our new assumptions we offer. We create reality by the power of our consciousness. Yeah.
And here we have Nassim Haramein. I took this from a live talk he gave, and he says, when you change in consciousness, that means the antenna of your body is more coherent, finely tuned to get more information out of the field. It's getting more of the high frequencies where there is more information. It's more coherent, so you can get channels you couldn't get before. So this supports our thesis that we're moving into a higher frequency, into a new way of being that has never been on the planet before in the history of the planet. As we come together, all four colors of man, we come together and put the puzzle together, the jigsaw puzzle together, and we see a picture that's never been seen before. So it's so exciting, and to have Nassim say it in this way is exciting. So we're shifting frequencies.
Back to the title of this talk then, shifting frequencies. And as we just said, everything is vibration or frequency. And here's a description that I came up with that I think is apt. We are conscious electromagnetic loving beings in a conscious electromagnetic loving abundant universe. And we have the ability to modify our state of consciousness, our vibration. In other words, we can choose our frequency and thereby choose our reality. And the laws, and Connie came up with this, I've never heard anyone else say that either, the laws are expanded in the higher frequency, the actual laws of physics. And if you think about plasma, for example, the laws in the plasma state are significantly different from the laws in the other three lower states, the solid, the liquid, and the gas. So there's a very strong physics corollary to what you came up with through your amazing intuition.
Well, I'll tell you, we're going to bring in a quote of Henry David Thoreau where I saw this through, because I get shown things by spirit. And when I get shown them, I'm like, okay, I got it. So I put it in my worldview and it becomes absolute. So that's my choice. That's and my reality.
Point is, raise your frequency, the rules change. It makes a big difference to one's life.
Here's a word, absolutely. And we're going to ask you to take some assumptions as absolutely true, because if we don't, and there's ifs, ands, or buts, we don't get there. So anyway, here we are. The 7 A's of consciousness are our requests to the universe and determine our frequency.
Ooh, what are we talking about?
Yeah. So here we go with what we have come up with 7 aspects of our consciousness that actually determine what frequency we're in and can be couched as our request to the conscious loving universe that has to give us everything we ask for because it loves us so much. Okay, so there's a physics way of saying it, and there's a love human way of saying it.
And 7 words in the English language, each beginning with the letter A, the 7 A's.
Yeah, and so here I came up with this sentence. Sitting in California in 2012, I came up with this sentence, putting them all together in one sentence. And this is a little toolkit one can carry around with one and check one's 7 A's throughout the day. With expanded awareness, now these 7 A's all begin with A. With expanded awareness and accurate assumptions, we choose our attitude, consciously direct our attention, align with our highest intuition, take committed action, and allow the loving universe to manifest beyond our wildest dreams, because we can't even conceive of what's in that frequency. So that's our little gift to you. And here is a quote attributed to Goethe. Many of you may have seen this and are familiar with it. He didn't actually write it. A Scottish mountaineer wrote this, and named W.H. Murray. Do you want to read that, Andrew?
Sure. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, that ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamed would have come his way, no woman either. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. Yes, sir.
That's very important, because once one definitely commits oneself, it's not providence moving, it's us moving into another frequency. And then all sorts of things occur that we could never have fathomed. So this quote and the quote by Henry David Thoreau, who we speak at the Thoreau Society. We're bringing the mystical Thoreau to the table. In the Thoreau Society, we've been speaking for a decade or so there. And Thoreau, in his conclusion to Walden, says this: I learned this, at least by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. He will put some things behind him, will pass an invisible boundary. New, universal, and more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around and within him. Hold on.
There you go.
Or the old laws will be expanded and interpreted in his favor in a more liberal sense, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings. So that's where I got those two quotes, are where I got this understanding that when we shift in consciousness and we shift in frequency, it's a whole new reality just for us. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. So that's what we're bringing to you folks today. So here's Wallace again talking about trust. Let's see what, there we go.
So, grandfather, it is the doubt that has created the reality that we live in now, and it has we're unable to understand other realities that and the knowings that you have about the real nature of the universe. It's this doubt that has been the problem from the beginning.
Yes, it was told that pollution begins in the mind. For having a doubt against a creature, so first, second, or third, that doubt will visit you. So we're in the third generation, and so we could see that doubt is here. So that doubt goes around in the universe of mind. Then what it does, it casts shadow of fear. So everything turned wild.
Because we have choice, is it too late to change the course?
No, we got one more to go yet. Remember, 4 times. And the 4th time I'm going to come back and I'm going to check up on you guys. So we got a little ways to go yet. So we already passed 3 and we got 1 more to go. So we still have a little time left. So that's why we're here. We're going to take every split second and to tell each other that we should all come back together. We still have that chance. So we have to come back and try to understand the fire, the rock, the water, and green. Then once we all understand, it has to be unanimous. Now we're going to escape from our own self-destruction. So the whole world will turn green again, and we could live here forever. We have to stop abusing. Then for doing so, they say if we put that fire back, they say as soon as you touch the earth, there will be a flash of light and canopy the whole universe, and all the sickness that are incurable would be destroyed, not people. And even our dead will resurrect from death. So it will be total victory. So it is possible that we could regain what we lost. This is the way we were told. Every step you take is a prayer. You have to live with it, walk with it. Not just say a bunch of Hail Marys and walk across the street and back to beer joints and play golf and win a roast and marshmallows. It's not that way. You have to live, walk with it. Mm-hmm. Your life.
Yeah.
You have to walk because Tagashla is watching you. Mm-hmm. And with this power here, that will is in you. That Chanimpa is you.
Yes, Wallace was such a good friend, and I love his humor. And so I don't know if you got a little chuckle here and there, but thank you, Wallace, for coming forth. And here, so we're saying it's a conscious, loving universe. And look at this amazing graphic. And here's another one.
This is the conscious, loving universe as it has so miraculously manifested on Earth. I mean, look at the total gorgeous beauty of nature. Before humans showed up, it was like this for how many millennia and millions of years, right? And then we showed up and started exploiting it. And we did some beautiful, beautiful things. And we're in the midst of doing some things that are not so beautiful. But it's wake up time.
Yeah, and as Wallace said, when we get the fire and the water and the green, and we get to put it back in its proper place, and we walk together in trust and in knowing the love that is all things. So there we have it, had it from Wallace, straight from the heart of the indigenous people. And here we move on into our 10 assumptions. We're going to move through this quickly, and just so you have some sense of it. And here we go.
Let me just say that. So 10 assumptions for a new paradigm. A paradigm is simply a set of assumptions. A set of mutually agreed upon assumptions creates a paradigm. Every culture has a paradigm, and every one of those paradigms is based on a certain list of assumptions. So it was somewhat arbitrary to say 10. Well, there was the 10 commandments. Let's try the 10 assumptions. And you will note that these are, each of them, pretty much the opposites of the existing assumptions. So you could look at each of those and go, what was I taught as a child? What did I learn from my culture? And it was probably not what we're about to share with you. So here we go, the first assumption.
And we ask that you take them as absolutely true for an exercise to see what construct, what the answers to one's questions arrive as once one looks at it from these 10 assumptions. And we have a set of definitions that we're not going into here, but we used words in a specific way. And so here we have the first assumption. We live in a conscious, loving universe. There is only love.
The second assumption. The universe loves us unconditionally. It gives us everything we ask for.
The third assumption. We create reality by the power of our consciousness.
The fourth assumption, and this will be familiar, the 7 A's of consciousness: awareness, assumption, attitude, attention, alignment, action, and allowing determine our frequency and are our requests to the loving universe.
The fifth assumption. Free will is an absolute law of the universe. We choose our frequency. We are masters of our own destiny.
The sixth assumption. Circumstance guides us on our journey to wholeness.
Circumstance loves us more than we do. Because circumstance is divine and we are operating according to a set of assumptions that are out of balance with creation and with our divine nature.
The seventh assumption. There is only now, this precious present moment. Living trustingly in the now, we experience the true nature of the universe.
It's the gateway to the trust frequency, the now. The eighth assumption. All of creation is one. Separation is a man-made illusion. We are the conscious, loving universe.
We are completely interconnected. Therefore, we are, from that perspective, the conscious, loving universe.
And it's fractal and holographic. So it even goes deeper than being interconnected.
The ninth assumption. Humanity is on an evolutionary upward spiral, leading inexorably to a higher reality, the trust frequency, heaven on earth.
The 10th assumption. The trust frequency is a real place of unfathomable joy, peace, and abundance that is freely available to anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Now, these may or may not be challenging to you. I just want to say that there are 10 assumptions, and if we had a week instead of an hour, we could take one in Monday morning, one Monday afternoon, and so on through Friday afternoon and get through the 10 assumptions. We would not run out of things to say. It's a deep, profound, new understanding. I think it's new or ancient or both.
It's emergent.
So this is
it's
what
an upward spiral. So we're contributing our gifts on this upward spiral. So
This is what happens when you adopt these as new assumptions unconditionally. Absolutely. What happens?
you move from victim to beloved. And our definition of humanity is that we are a collection of divine, autonomous, sovereign beings who have chosen, there's that free will, to incarnate on earth, to learn and grow on their soul's journey to wholeness, self-love, self-acceptance, and alignment with their divinity, purpose, and gift. And I think I'd change that to with our divinity, purpose, and gift.
And our soul's
Our
journey.
soul's
Yeah,
journey,
exactly.
yeah.
It's very, very inclusive.
Yeah, it's us, kids.
Uh-huh.
So
If
we
you
move-
go look up humanity in the dictionary, you will not find that definition.
yeah, and
And
many
that
of our
applies-
definitions.
That applies to a number of the words we use, yeah.
So we have an online course called The Dance of Souls, where we apply the trust frequency principles to our relationships. And so it's just so important that we take this construct and bring it into our lives and use it for our journey to wholeness, for our journey on the evolutionary upward spiral, our personal journey. So with the Dance of Souls, applying the trust frequency, we say there is only love. Let's remember, there is only love. There is only free will. There is only the soul's journey to wholeness that came out of our definition of humanity. Okay, so this is the foundation for this understanding with the Dance of Souls. And, whoops, wrong way.
Other way.
So this is about our relationship with ourselves, others, and the universe. So we give our overarching act of free will, and that is that we gave permission to the universe to take us on our journey. We when we incarnated, this overarching act of free will, that's how I figured out the between determinism and free will, it feels deterministic when circumstance takes us somewhere, and people showing up in our lives that won't stop doing stuff that annoy us or whatever. And we have to understand that we did give an overarching act of free will to go on this journey to self-love and self-acceptance. So we gave the universe permission to take us on this journey, and everybody in the universe is this love. So people show up to show us our light and our shadow, those parts of ourselves we don't love yet. So repeated behaviors in our lives are indicators that we have work to do. Rather than shaming and blaming others for showing up in our lives with things that trigger us, those triggers are indicators that we have work to do. And we don't make it about them, because they have their journey and our journeys have come together, and they're learning from their gifts to us that may be not kind, not loving, not all those things we see as not love. And so that's the gift we're bringing through the trust frequency with this Dance of Souls. And we come to understand that everything happens for us, not to us. We shift from victim to beloved.
And if I could go back to the concept of circumstance, anyone ever heard that expression, I am a victim of circumstance? Well, guess what? We are not victims of circumstance. We are beneficiaries of circumstance. how's that for a changing of perspective?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so in this construct on the nature of the universe, we're resolving that paradox between the things that we see as love and the things that we see as not love. It's a huge paradox to say everything is love. But when we come to understand the unconditional nature of that love, that it gives us everything we ask for, because it has to, because it loves us so much, and that we gave this overarching act of free will to come on the planet to align with our divinity, to bring our purpose to the world, to come to total self-love, not just the parts of ourselves our culture wants us to see, or mommy or daddy or friends or whatever, but who are we? And that's what's being asked of us now in this evolution of consciousness, in this time now, is to do that work, face our shadows, shift our frequency into that understanding there is only love, beyond victim and perpetrator. It's huge, beyond right, wrong, good and evil, in as we access that field Rumi talked about. So,
And we're getting there, folks, and that call appears to be to open our hearts, because contained within the hearts of each one of us is a huge store of love. And by love with a capital L, we don't just mean that kind of love that I feel for my grandson or Connie, or holding hands and all those beautiful things. We actually mean the primordial energy, life force of the universe. Love is energy. You can take the equation E equals mc squared and replace it with L equals mc squared. And using that equation, you can calculate the amount of love in the universe.
and then there's also the human love, the love with a small l, which is compassion, empathy, kindness, all those things we're being asked now to just go forward and treat people with love, with kindness, compassion, empathy. So there's the love with a capital L that's unconditional, so that those things we see as not love are in fact love. And that comes to abuse, to horrible things that have happened. We have to come to understand that our soul actually asked for those things. It's huge. And many people have made that transition into knowing that they are divine, that everything is in divine order, and that they have healed and moved through the trauma. And that's what's going on today, is that trauma healing. And it's so key, because the earth is moving into this higher frequency. And if we want to stay with her into this new earth, we have to do our personal work. And so what I understand is that all of creation is awaiting the love that's contained in the human heart. As we open our hearts and we bring this, we transmute those energies of fear, separation, and scarcity that all our old systems were built on. And that was so that we could do this exercise for all of creation, transmute those energies into trust, into abundance, into oneness. So that's what we're doing. And you can hear it on everyone's lips in our world. So there is a large portion of humanity that's accessing this and expressing it. And it's so important, like Jim was saying with Plato's cave, it's to keep the focus on that light. And when you go back in and people that are still focused on the shadow, well, that's free will. We have to
have that right. You can stay there as long as you like, but why would you?
Yeah, but it's total free will, total choice. And we have to let our loved ones have their choice, and we to make our choice. And we know that we're supported by the loving universe as we make that choice. And as we do that work, that self-doubt, self-hatred has to go. So we have to do that work. And so check out our Dance of Souls course and see what that can do for you. And so in the trust frequency,
trust replaces fear.
Ease replaces struggle.
Generosity replaces hoarding.
Abundance replaces scarcity.
Unity replaces separation.
New systems develop.
New relationships replace outmoded ways of being.
An understanding of the interconnectedness and sacredness of all things emerges.
It is in this way that true peace and profound freedom will come to prevail on earth.
And here we have the indigenous worldview that we're opening to, and that is coming on the planet, along with those aspects of the trust frequency. So here we'll just go through this. This was from an article written by Donald Fishiko, and he is a native scholar, historian at the Arizona State University.
Mhm.
And here we go.
The indigenous worldview breaks down into these bullet points, if you like: respect and reverence for all of life,
Interrelatedness of all things and actions.
co-creative power of thought.
So you can see this quantum reality that we've expressed. You can see it in this worldview, and you can see the human heart. This respect and reverence for all of life, that can't come through science. It can't come through understanding the interrelatedness of all things and actions and the co-creative power of thought. That respect and reverence comes from the human heart and from the love we carry.
Concern for future aspects of present action.
Living in abundance. Oops, excuse me.
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one, because in the native way, it is an abundant universe. The giveaway is huge in the native way. You don't hoard and keep stuff. You give it away because you know there's more coming. And that's what I got.
So living in balance.
Living in balance.
Concern for the common good.
Trust in a higher power.
Incorporation of metaphysical into physical reality.
Equality of all aspects of life.
Sharing.
Cooperation. So that you're hearing these things on people's lips now. All of this is coming into play. And Donald Fishiko wrote this call for native genius and indigenous intellectualism. This came to me decades ago, and I've been carrying it with me because I came to know through Wallace and through this other elders who came into my life that it is that it is quantum science, it is intellectual, it is genius, and that it's coming forth for humanity at this time. So in the higher frequency, and this is a little graph to show you that the higher frequency, when we understand that it's conscious, that it's all love, that there's only free will, that we're on an upward spiral, that it's timeless and there's oneness, we move into this higher frequency where the laws are expanded. And then we have new behaviors because there's meaning. Everything's okay. We're powerful. We trust. We know there's infinite balance, and we act in cooperation, which was mentioned in the indigenous worldview. So in that higher frequency, this is what happens. And the old paradigm, that lower frequency of separation, not love, mechanistic, time, destruction, determinism, all that, those understanding, those assumptions lead us into a lower frequency. And here, this is how we feel. We're in conflict. We're victim. We're powerless. We're full of anxiety. We're full of fear. We feel helpless. Anybody feel those things? Well, we've got a way out, and that is going into a higher frequency and shifting our assumptions about the nature of the universe.
So take a deep breath and just inhale everything we have just spoken. Every word still exists, and if you can just inhale that so that it is remembered. There's something here, friends. Certainly I can speak for myself, and that having co-written this book with Connie, and if you write the book, you better walk the talk. And it's liberating. It's amazing the difference it makes in one's everyday life, aside from the big picture.
Yes, Andrew, thanks for bringing that. Just to take a minute and just breathe it in, what we've been saying, and the energy that we've brought forth through this understanding.
And in a minute, we'd like to invite Jim back in.
And here it is, the fractal holographic universe. Here's this shell.
Beautiful nautilus shell. Look at that. Is that gorgeous
Is
or
that
what?
we are all one. We are all connected.
And look at that spiral nebula. Whoa.
Yeah, from the James Webb telescope, this new telescope. So here we are. And we just have to say, trust the loving universe.
Love being able to put all of the foregoing into 4 words. Trust the loving universe.
And here's the heart nebula. Isn't that beautiful? So, and here's how to reach us. Our website.
Rather a lot on the screen, but we have an online course called The Dance of Souls. We have a free ebook called The Conscious Loving Universe, a guidebook. And we have, of course, our main work, which is the Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm.
And that is all accessible on the trustfrequency.net. So.
And we'd love to hear from you. If this is of interest, let us know, please.
Yeah, you can write to us at trust@thetrustfrequency.net. And thank you so much for being with us. And we'll stop screen sharing now and see what wants to happen next.
I think Jim Garrison might be around.
All right. So.
There he is.
Hey, Jim.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. What a tour de force of a loving, intentional universe. Thank you so much. Everybody just loved it, as you may have seen if you've been tracking the chats. And I think the session today was very needed because we've been dealing with a lot of tough issues. And sometimes it's hard to keep looking at the shadows at the back of the cave.
Yeah.
So, as several people have said, they found your session today very much needed and very refreshing. So, in first instance, I just want to thank you for bringing this energy in, because it's very good to be reminded of the simplicity of the obvious. And you have done that in a very, very elegant way. So I just want to thank you for it, because, you know, and would love to have your further comment. I think you're bringing together really the essence of, you know, indigenous wisdom, the latest scientific explorations into cosmology and physics, you know, Nassim Haramein, about how the science is now affirming that indigenous intuition, and then blending that with Eastern and Western mysticism. I think that's really the portal through which we remember the essential assumptions, because those are emanating out of the bedrock of what the indigenous people have been saying, what latest cosmological science is indicating, and what the great mystics have also been aware of over time. So what you're bringing forth is the, I would say, the intuitive awareness of humanity that someone like Black Elk, Wallace Black Elk, and others have so profoundly articulated in our time. I'd love to have you just speak about this synthesis that you're bringing together, because I think it's the right cluster.
Well, you've just expressed it so beautifully, Jim, because
it's a tough act to follow.
Tough act to follow, because you ended with the fact that we know it.
It's in there.
It is us. We
Yeah.
are the universe. We know it, and that's what people are saying about our book. It's that they've known this, but they've never had the words for it. And Andrew actually wrote this book, and he wanted it to be a pop book, something that was accessible to all people. So it's not heavy duty at all. It's totally accessible, and anyone can open it to any page, and it'll have a message. So we just are just thankful that Spirit brought us together with our experiences. I mean, it was obviously divinely orchestrated from the beginning. We met 20 years ago at the Omega Point, at the Omega Institute. And at that very place at Omega where they call the Omega Point. And just our our interests, our lifelong interests in the nature of the universe, in consciousness, in humanity, has just been so wonderful, and such a synthesis of us too, with this book and with this work that we're bringing in. We're filmmakers too. We have several films that we've done. One of them is called In Search of the Future, What Do the Wise Ones Know? And that book, that film,
I think it was a film, more of a film than a book.
more of a film than a book. But that opens in the Kalahari with the Bushmen of the Kalahari. We have scientists, futurists, and indigenous elders. And the elders are saying things that they don't normally say because we've known them for 20 to 40 years before we put them on film. So we highly recommend this film, and it's available on insearchofthefuturemovie.com. And so
that's In Search of the Future 1, and we're in the middle of our early interview collections. And Jim, you graced us with an interview very recently in California when we visited you at your home. In Search of the Future 2, The Only Way Out is Up, which asks the question, how are we going to get out of this mess, dear fellow humans? Is there a vision for that? So this will be a weaving, a tapestry of very uplifting statements. Some of them may be disturbing because we're not turning away from the shadow, but most of the people we interview are firmly gazing in out of the cave into the beautiful universe out there lit by the sun.
like you, Jim, like the work you're doing with Humanity Rising, you're addressing what is and looking to the sun and looking for that way out. Hey, come on, let's go. Let's get out of this cave. Come on, kids. Let's have some fun out here in the sun. So we just have the utmost respect for you and what you're doing. So
thank you. I thank you, and it's a real joy and an inspiration to have people like you on Humanity Rising, and know that we can be broadcasting globally, and we can be promoting the rising part of humanity rather than the falling part of humanity, because the falling part is what we get in the mass media every single day. And so we have a real challenge to highlight some of the truths that people like you have been spending decades discerning, and then putting into a form that could be spread and disseminating into the popular culture. Your book reminded me of, Be Here Now.
I thought you were going to say that. Yes. Thank you. That's a major compliment, Jim. Thank you.
Yeah, because I can still remember reading Be Here Now. Ram Dass, that's who I was.
Of course.
Ram Dass.
Lama Foundation.
So you had to kind of move the book around so you can read it, because some of his sentences were in a circle. So here I was at Harvard, reading all these tomes in Greek and Hebrew and, all these metaphysics. And I came across Be Here Now, and it was such a presentation of a completely alternative reality and way of communicating. I was arrested, and the book really had a powerful impact on me as an antidote to everything that I was stuffing in my head in these august institutions. And your work is in a similar genre, similar vein, and I think that's part of what's so badly needed.
Yeah, Jim, I was very aware of that alignment there, because Lama Foundation put out that book, and I think it was 72, thereabouts. The Ram Dass book, Be Here Now. This next book was Toward the One. You may not know, it's the same format, 8x8, looks very similar. It's more of brown recycled paper. It's a gorgeous book by Pir Vilayat Khan, who was my Sufi teacher for my introduction to Sufism.
I read that one too, about the same time.
There you go. And I thought, what if the trust frequency used that same format? I seriously considered formatting the book in that exact, so you could have the 3 books in a stack, and sell them as a pack.
It's never too late.
Never too late.
But the cool thing is, as we said, the now is the gateway to the trust frequency. And the fun thing is that we're losing our memory. People call it a senior moment or this or that. But if we can't remember what we're supposed to do tomorrow, and we can't remember what we did yesterday, where are we?
Alzheimer's?
We're in the now. And what I've said is we're moving from the memory mind into the intuitive mind. So that's what I've been watching over the decades since I got that revelation. Because I asked the universe, how is this going to happen in a good way? This shift that I had been seeing from the 90s on. And my daughter was sitting at the kitchen counter one day, and she said, "Mom, what would happen if everyone got amnesia?" I'm like, that's it. That's it. We're going to forget.
The solution.
We're going to forget that we ever thought a diamond was worth more than a rock or whatever. All these artificial values we've put on things, and that there's the other and all that. We're just going to forget. And all of a sudden, it's just, we're going to give it away. We're going to move into that frequency. So, and let go of trauma, and that's this process now. This trauma healing is so important, to let it go. So that doesn't negate the process. And that's what we're in right now. And we're in that cleansing process. All the stuff we see on the news, all this polarity, to me, it's a cleansing process. We can't legislate it out. We have to let it out. Okay, we have to let it out and come to terms with it and just play it out. And so that's what I think is going on. And so for me, there's only the coming of peace on earth and heaven on earth. That's all there is. That's all there ever has been, and all there ever will be. So the answers you get depend on the questions you ask. And I ask, how does this serve the coming of peace on earth? And you get a completely different answer.
And I look at it from the perspective of, we're already here. Heaven is right here on this planet. This beautiful, beautiful planet is Earth already, but we have forgotten that. And once we reawaken to that, we can restore this planet and turn it back into the beautiful thing it always has been, along with us humans, once we become qualified to be a legitimate part of that, and we stop exploiting and destroying and just realize that we really can't keep doing that. And why would we?
It's a frequency thing.
It's a frequency
It's
thing.
a frequency thing, because the earth, this new earth people talk about, it's here. We're just not on it.
It's already here.
It's already here. It's the heaven on earth. We're just not there because we haven't yet gotten into that place beyond duality, beyond victim, perpetrator, right, wrong, good, evil. I mean, it's a huge leap, but until we get there, we're still at a lower vibration. The earth is waiting for us. All of creation is awaiting us to make that shift. And the trees and the rocks are coming closer and closer to talking to us. Wallace we had two-way conversations with rocks, as I mentioned. There's just such possibility in
he heard
other
the trees
frequencies.
singing, didn't he?
Yeah. He asked me, we were driving along, and he said to me, "Do you hear them? Do you hear?" I said, "What? Do you hear the trees singing?" I'm like, "Wallace, I want to hear the trees singing."
And the Bushmen of the Kalahari can hear the stars singing. When their babies are born, the first thing they do with that newborn baby is at night they hold it up to the stars so it can get its instructions.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so one time I did a forum in Maine with a bunch of native elders and others, and I had a small tree in a bucket,
A little pine tree.
little pine tree in a bucket, and I put it on the podium as a speaker at this forum. And so we all were quiet and we listened to this tree. And what it said to me was, "Gee, I'm really glad to be here." And somebody else said, well, it said to her, "If you love me so much, why don't you come give me a hug?"
And that tree is now about 45 feet tall and lives in Maine on Indian Island on the, is it the Penobscot?
Yeah.
The Penobscot Reservation. And we have recently visited that tree, whose name is Piney.
And it's huge.
Beautiful.
A friend of ours took it home and planted it. So anyway, that's some of our stories.
We have a few more, but Jim, we're probably hitting 10:30 in Colorado time.
We
Yes,
might mention
our-
one other thing. One other
Sure.
thing is the America piece.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And
Next adventure.
the spiritual beginnings of America. We're going to be doing a forum with you in the end of July, and bringing in that spiritual beginnings of this nation, shifting that origin story that has been trashed by revisionist history to negate the beauty that was there in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Well, not Massachusetts, it wasn't then, between the Pokanoket Wampanoag and the Mayflower Pilgrim Separatists, and who the Pilgrim Separatists were, who they stood up for freedom of conscience, where we're headed, freedom to act according to our direct connection with the divine, which is exactly indigenous. Okay, trust in the creator, the higher power. Indigenous people live according to that. And so we're pointing out that spiritual alignment that was at the beginning of this nation, which is huge. And so we're going to have a forum about spiritual activism and how this country was founded on spiritual activism. And it's a completely different way of shifting reality, shifting systems.
And seeing our history.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. This has been an inspiration. And as Connie just said, we'll be having Connie and Andrew back with other colleagues at the end of July to talk about the sacred origins of American history as their participation in Humanity Rising unfolds. But thank you, dear ones. This has been beautiful. It's been inspiring and deeply needed. We've drunk deeply of the cup of wisdom that you have provided for us for today. So thank you. So that does it for us for today, everyone. You can join Connie and Andrew in the after chat. You'll see the link in the chat box that Stan has just put in. And then we'll see everyone again tomorrow for a discussion of artificial intelligence and how we need to evaluate this extraordinary phenomenon that's emerging in human society. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jim. Blessings
Bye
to
for
you
now.
and to all.